Hey guys, HackerSploit here, back again with another video. Welcome back to the OSCP prep series. In this particular video, we're going to be taking a look at PwnLab from VulnHub. Now this is a boot to root box, so it's structured in a CTF style, and it's quite easy, although in my opinion it covers quite a few things in regards to getting your initial exploitation on a system. And insofar as privilege escalation is concerned, there are a few interesting things that I think this box highlights. So the objective is to get the root flag, and to do that you need to elevate your privileges to root. So there's quite a bit of things or stuff that I need to cover here. Now I just want to make something clear. The structure that I go for in my CTF videos is to actually try and demonstrate how a vulnerability is exploited, or why we're doing what we're doing, and to sort of give you a bit of an idea as to what my methodology is when I approach a box. All right, so the first thing is, of course, to identify the target virtual machine IP address, which I've done. It's running on my local network, and I've opened up the web server, and it looks like a some sort of a content management system, right? If we take a look at the Nmap results, and you can actually take a look at the Nmap scan configuration here, it's fairly simple and gives me what I'm looking for. So firstly, we have a web server running on port 80, which I hope you can see. I'll just zoom in slightly there. There we are. And that is running Apache HTTPD 2.4.10. The interesting thing to point out here is that we're running Debian, all right? So that gives us an idea as to what the operating system, or what operating system we're dealing with. We also get the HTTP server header and the title. The title tells us that this is an image hosting website or a content management system for images, right? We also have RPC, although RPC will not really give you anything. You can try and enumerate RPC information using enum for Linux. I'll probably also be covering that as well in some later video. We also have a MySQL server, which is interesting, right? We have a content management system and we have a MySQL server. So I hope you're making the connections that I am. So for the MySQL info script, we can see it gives us information regarding the version of MySQL installed and the capabilities, the various configurations. And what is interesting to me is the salt, but not really, but the MySQL native password plugin, which is used for authentication. Which again, might give us an idea as to what hashing algorithm has been used to encrypt the passwords in the event we can get access, right? So that's pretty much it for the ports that are open. But as I said, it looks like we're going to be dealing with the web application. It's pretty obvious that that is the case, right? We don't have SSH access, so that's another. That's something that we can get rid of right off the bat. Okay, so when we explore the web application, I typically like to open up the robots.txt page, and it tells us that that doesn't work. I then try and perform some directory indexing, or I try and detect whether the server does have indexing enabled. So I can just run a test here, or maybe upload, which is in this case might give us something. And indeed it does. So, there is some form of indexing for the upload directory. And yeah, so we know that this is probably where the images are stored. But in order to learn more about this in the background, I'm just going to run a quick Nikto scan. So I'll just open this up and I'll zoom in, and we'll run Nikto. And I'll just put in the server IP, which is, I think I should know it by head. There we are. And we'll hit enter, and let's explore the web application. All right, so it looks fairly simple. We can view the source. The source is fairly simple, doesn't give us anything else. It simply just gives us, the various, the header, which is has the home page, the login page, and the upload page, right? So nothing interesting there. If we take a look at login, you can see it's a straightforward login form. We can try and enumerate some information from this using standard SQL queries. And that tells us login failed. We also have the upload page, which tells us that you must be logged in to actually access the upload feature, right? So it's not that straightforward. So it's clear that our objective is to try and find a way of logging in here. Now, if we explore the actual URL bar here, you can see that because this is designed in PHP, we have the ability to specify a resource, and it's doing this through the page option. So we can specify a resource on the web server. So for example, I can say test, And what this will do is it opens up two types of attacks. Number one, it opens up command injection attacks, which allow us to actually, if I concatenate that, well, not really concatenate, if I just say I want to specify a new command, and we know we're running Linux and I type something like ID, well, that doesn't give us anything, which is interesting, right? The other type of attack that this opens up is local file inclusion, right? And local file inclusion will typically be, the process of trying to explore contents of the web server or of the system itself. And, we might have that available. So for example, if I just try and say, just try and access a directory there, we can see some form of interesting output here. And the output, of course, is nothing, which means there might be some sort of a filtering functionality in place, which, is interesting. And of course, we know that we're running PHP. So that's very interesting. Let's try and explore the web application with Burp, just so that we get an understanding of what's happening in the background. All right, so I'll fire up Burp Suite, and we'll give that a few tests here. All right, so I'll just start that up. Yes, I want to leave the wizard, and I'll start Burp Suite there. And we'll just make sure that the intercept option is actually enabled. Sorry, that's proxy intercept is on, and we'll just refresh the page and just take a look at what a request looks like. All right, so we can see that a request is fairly simple insofar as the parameters are involved. We have the PHP session ID, which I think if we send to decoder, let's see if we can actually decode this. It probably won't give us much. Yeah, it doesn't give us any. It's not even in base 64. I don't know why I did that, but anyway. So we can see we don't have anything else. Let's try and explore some of the other pages, right? So I'll just forward that, and we'll try and explore the login page. All right, so the login page again, for some reason, it's still giving us the actual directory specification there, which I'll get rid of. So nothing special there. We'll just forward that again, and I'll just try and refresh that. Yeah, we don't get anything. As for insofar as the accept parameter is concerned, we can see that it accepts HTML, XHTML, XML, so on and so forth. All right, so I'll forward that as well, and let's try upload. All right, it's always good to try and explore the upload page. It doesn't give us a list of extensions allowed, which is fine. We probably could view the source here. If we try and click on upload, I'll just disable the intercept option here, and click on upload. We view the source, and yeah, we don't get anything, right? So let's try and explore local file inclusion. Now, local file inclusion, as I said, will really depend on the target operating system and filters. Now, in this case, we know we are running a LAMP stack, so Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So in the case of PHP, what would typically happen, or a technique that is typically used, is the ability to actually have a PHP filter, right? And a PHP filter will essentially filter the contents of a particular PHP page or a script. And the way we can check for this is if we actually just use the PHP filter option here instead of specifying the directory outright, and try and explore the content of pages in much depth, or to try and see if it brings up anything of use. All right, so to explain more about LFI, you can see that we'll just give you a brief description here. So remote file inclusion is when a file is loaded from a remote server, and you essentially can access files on the root or on the system itself. In our particular case, we're dealing with a filter, right? So again, you can take a look at all of the various ways of trying to access an important directory, like the etc password directory, which is usually a test. You have the ability to encode it as well. So for example, we can test this out, and let's see if this actually displays anything. But in our particular case, we can see that it really, sorry, let me just go back a step here. It really isn't displaying anything, which is why I'm sort of saying there might be a filter, because you can see where the results should be displayed, it should actually be displaying that. So that's interesting. If we scroll to the bottom here, it actually explains it quite well. So there we are. We have LFI and RFI using PHP wrappers. So again, we can use the PHP filter and convert a particular resource on the website. For example, the index page, we can actually convert it to base 64. So for example, PHP filter convert base 64 encode, and then we specify the resource, and then we'll get the base64 encoded version of that web page, which we can then decode quite easily because it is base64. So I'll just open up CyberChef so that we can actually test this out, right? So I'll say open up CyberChef. There we are. And in the meantime, let's actually take a look at the Nikto results. All right, so the Nikto results give us some interesting results. So wow, we actually have a config.php file. There we are. So what is a config.php file in the context of a LAMP stack? Well, a config.php file is used to actually configure how the web application will run, what a user is allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, any extensions or modules that are being used. And it can also contain database IDs and passwords. Now, you know, in most cases, this should not actually be allowed to be read by, you know, public users, or users should not actually be able to access this. So let's see if this file actually exists on the web server, which again could give us something interesting. So I'll say, you know, config .php, right, and we'll hit enter, and again it doesn't give us anything, which might explain or you know, again push us towards the fact that we may have a filter here. All right, so let's actually try using the PHP filter here and encode one of our pages. Let's start off with the index page, right? So I'll get rid of that there, and we can actually use the config page first just to see what that contains. So we have the config page, we hit enter, and it looks like that works, and that gives us the base64 encoded content of the web page. So we can now take this into CyberChef, and you know, I'll just say from base64 we want to decode it, right? So we paste that in here, and we get what appears to be database credentials. So we get the server, which, you know, localhost. We get the database credentials for the root user. We also get a password and the database, the actual database in question, which is called users. So what this means is, which again is why I pointed out that when you're dealing with a content management system, there's a high probability that there's going to be a database because you need a place to store credentials. So that means that this content management system is utilizing the database, and it's getting the credentials from the config page, from the actual configuration page, right? So what we can do is we can actually use these credentials. Let me just open that up. We can use these credentials to log in, or to attempt to log into the MySQL server. I'm not entirely sure as to whether it may support remote logins. Let's do that right now. So I'll just open up a new tab so we don't confuse that. So MySQL, the user is root, the user is root, and the password we will specify ourselves. The host is 192.168.1.155. We hit enter, paste in the password, which I think I copied. I'm not really sure why that did not copy, but we can just you know, paste it in there, and it doesn't seem to be pasting that. Let me just paste that again. There we are. Fantastic. So we're able to log in, and you know, if we say show databases, that tells us we have the users table. So we can then say use users, which is where the credentials are most likely going to be stored, and then we can say show the tables for this particular database, and we only have one table, which tells us you know, it's called users. So we can then dump the contents of this entire table by saying select everything from the table users, and we hit enter, and we get user credentials here, which most likely are for the web application, but may also be used in privilege escalation. So we have three users. We have Kent, Mike, and Kane. All right, so we can see that this is base64, which is interesting, which again we can decode quite easily. So let's try the password for Kent, and let's see if we can decode it successfully. So I'll just get rid of the content there, and we can paste this in, and it looks like we get what appears to be a legitimate credential, or a password for that matter. So let's try and log in. So the user is Kent. I'll go back in here. We'll hit login, and that is Kent, and we can paste that in there, hit login, and it looks like that works. And we can now upload images, which is, I'm guessing, where we can try and upload our PHP reverse shell. I'm not really sure whether they are filters, but I'll actually take you through that process as well. All right, so we have so far gotten some credentials for the web application. We can now try and upload our reverse shell. So let's try and do that. All right. So the reverse shell, I think I already have it downloaded here. There we are. So we'll just copy PHP reverse shell into our current directory. Sorry, the actual reverse shell, the PHP file. There we go, PHP reverse shell. No, that's my bad. That's a directory. And we're looking for the PHP file, and we'll just copy it in here, and we'll change the name to just shell.php or something generic. All right, so move shell.php to, sorry, reverse shell, my bad. I don't know why I'm making these mistakes. So reverse shell.php to shell.php. And we can now try and access the content and modify the shell to our liking. So shell.php, I think I should have this configured to my IP already, although I think I should check that. So I'll just check my IP. It is, yeah, that is correct. So I think I should have that set up correctly. And the IP is set to 1234, which is fine. Yeah, everything looks fine. So we can use this. All right, so let's try and upload this and let's see what type of output we get. So we're going to go into Browse and Documents, and we'll click on VulnHub here. So PwnLab, and we'll open up, we'll just say shell.php, open that up, hit upload, and it tells us what I was expecting. So not allowed extension, please upload images only. All right, so this is interesting. Let's try, we of course try to intercept the requests that are being sent to the web server, but let's try and use the local file inclusion technique here to actually get the contents of the upload page, right? So we can see whether we have any specifications regarding the extensions that we can upload in the form of images, right? So we can say that is upload. I think the page is just called upload, hit enter, we get the content there. And I'll just paste this in here, and that should give us an idea of what we can and can't do. All right, interesting. So we get the code right over here, and then of course, because the PHP code is filtered, this is what we missed out on. So the upload directory, as we guessed, is upload. The file extension uses the file name dot and then image info, and it uses the actual extension that we specify. So we can see that there's a whitelist option here for the file extensions. So let me see if I can find that, right? So I think I saw that there we are. The whitelist array is JPG, JPEG, GIF, and PNG. All right, so let's test out and see whether a PNG file will work. Okay. And I'll also turn on Burp here. So I'll just go to upload one more time, and I'll make sure that Burp is enabled and intercept is set to on. And I'm just going to browse and specify the shell again. Sorry, I actually need to rename that to, so move shell.php to shell.png. And we can just move it like so. And we can then browse for the PNG file and hit open. Right, and I think we'll have to execute it manually. So let's hit upload, and we get the request. We can see for the actual content, we know that is multi-part. There's a multi-part form data, but for the content type, we get image PNG. So let's see if that works. We go back. It gives us an error. Let's see if that actually uploaded. Upload. I'll just forward that. Sorry, and that does not look like it's working. All right, so it looks like it's not working with PNG files. One quick way of actually bypassing this is using the, I'll just refresh this page here, is through using image headers, which I think might be the case here. So we can try and change the actual extension, to either a JPEG or a JPG or a GIF file, which in this particular case we can actually try. But a quick way of bypassing this, a little trick, sorry, is to actually include a file format or an image format header that will essentially tell the web server that this is this type of file, and you can go ahead and upload it. So let me just take you through that. All right, so to actually bypass any upload filtering, a great way, as I said, is to include the GIF header or the GIF header. GIF is a file format, and I think we can actually find it online. So GIF header, I don't think that'll give us anything, because that's way too vague. of a statement. I'll just accept the risk and continue. There we are. GIF file format header. I think there we are. It looks like we have the signature format. So there we are. That's the actual format here. This one right over here. So we need to include this within our shell, and we can preserve the same extension, the PHP extension. I can actually just modify the file now. So shell.png, it's still the PHP content. All we need to do is include that particular header at the top there, and this will specify, you know, that this is a GIF file, and of course we'll trick the web server. And let's actually try and see whether that works right now. So I'm just gonna, I think we have that disabled, but we can actually just try it out really quickly and see if that works. So shell.png upload, and it just gives us a random image there, which doesn't have a source. So let's try and access the upload directory, and it looks like it actually uploaded our file or our shell, and it gave it a different name, which again makes sense. When we explored the code, the actual source code for the upload form, it actually changes the file name but maintains the file extension. All right, so let's try and execute this. I'll just open up a quick reverse shell here. We'll just say netcat nvlp 1234. That's the port we set up our listener on, and we'll try and execute that with the web server, and we should get a shell, and we don't. All right, no need for worry there. This is one of the reasons I really like this box, because nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Okay, so it doesn't execute it. With this error is pretty standard, regardless of whether it has been executed or not. We can take a step back here. I'll just refresh the page, and we can take a look at the actual source code for the index file, right? To learn more about the web application. So we'll use the same technique here. And try and bypass that. So, you know, I can just say, for example, let's just use the login here. So we'll convert the index file, which I don't think we need yeah, there we are. So that actually gives us the contents of the index file, and I'll get rid of that and paste that in there. And yeah, it looks like we get additional information that we didn't get. So number one, just at the top here, we can see that it tells us that multilingual support has not been implemented yet, and language files can be specified through the cookie, and can actually point towards a language file or a language.php file. So you can see it says lang set cookie lang. That's the actual attribute name for the cookie, to allow you to specify a language file. So what's happening here is multilingual support is being implemented and can actually be used, but the language files need to be specified manually. All right, and we can actually exploit this and set our cookie. We can actually use we can actually modify our cookie to actually execute the reverse shell that we uploaded, and this can be done through the lang cookie attribute, right? So one more time, I think we need to explore the web application and just let's see what's going on here. So I'll just go back home, and we can then try and see what's going on exactly. But before I do that, I just want to nail down the actual image name, because we're going to need it for the lang cookie. So I'll just copy that, and we know it's under upload, right? And I just want to note this down. So I'm just going to open up a text editor here, and we'll paste that in there. So that is the actual directory there. So this is under upload, and yeah, that looks about right. Okay, let's open up Burp again, and we can try and modify this, and let's see whether it executes. I want to make sure my listener is still running. It is. And I'll just set intercept to on, and we'll refresh this, and it looks like we have the cookie option. So we can get rid of the PHP session ID, which might log us out, because it may be storing it's used for identity, because we actually logged in. So we can say lang is equal to, and we can then specify the actual file here. So upload, and we can then paste that in there, and I'll just get rid of that double / and hit forward. And we don't get anything there. Are we specifying the correct directory? It looks like. Let's try that again. No harm in trying that again. and lang is equal to, my bad, let me just get rid of that again. So lang is equal to, let's try two directories up, or back, sorry, and then we specify upload, and let's forward that again, and we get our reverse shell. Fantastic. All right, so we've been able to get our reverse shell. It gives us a bash, well, not a bash, but just a normal shell here with no job control, and our current user ID is data, which makes sense because we exploited the web server. So there's no surprises there. So really quickly, what I can try and do is we can try and spawn a TTY shell. So we can use Python, and we can just say c import. And well, we can actually just make that a single quote. So import, and then we specify pty and pty dot spawn, and then we can spawn a bash shell here. So bin bash, and I think we should be able to get one. I'm not sure whether Python is installed. You should probably run that first, and we get a bash shell, which means we had Python this whole time. And we can try and enumerate some information here. So cat etc issue, we know we're running Debian 8. All right, some kernel information, uname A, we can see it's running 3.16 and it's a 32-bit system, which is fine. Let's try and enumerate the users on the system. So cat etc password, and it looks like we have the same users in addition to one more called John, because I think we had Kent, Mike, and Kane from the database. Let's try and elevate our privileges using their credentials. So we don't have access to any of them, so I'll just try and decode, and we can try and see whether we have access to them. But if we take a closer look, yeah, they both have legitimate shells that they can access, although we're not guaranteed access through these passwords because these were only used for the web application. So this is the password for the user. Let me just confirm that again. That is for the user Kent, right? So we'll say Kent, we'll switch to the user Kent, provide his password, and we get access to the user Kent. All right, now Kent, I don't think has any, any sudo privileges. So you can say sudo apt update, and we don't have that, so we don't have sudo installed, which is fine. Permission denied. All right, so I don't think we have permissions for the user Ken. So let's try and access another user on the system, which is Mike, right? And we also need to decode his password. I should have done this before, but anyway. There we are. We also get his credentials. So the user Mike, and we'll say switch user to Mike. We hit enter. Authentication failure, which means that is that's an incorrect password, more or less. Let's try the last user just so that we know what we're working with, which in this case is Kane. We'll try and log into Kane. Sorry, that's here. By the way, let's actually check out the home directories because we haven't done that. So we have John, Kane. Let's see if we can access John. We can access Kane. We only have access to Kent. So let's try Kent first. We have any files in here that could be useful? Nothing there. No bash history. So yeah, let's try and access Kane. All right, and I'll paste in the password there. Did we actually copy the correct hash? Let me just make sure that is done because I don't think we decoded it. There we go. So let's copy the password for Kane, and I'll paste that in there, and we get access to Kane. So let's explore his home directory, and it looks like we get a binary. Well, let's actually verify that. Message Mike. Yeah, it is a binary, and we don't get anything else. All right, so let's try and execute it. So message Mike. And it gives us a command that failed. So cat home Mike message.txt. It's using the cat utility to display the message stored in home Mike message.txt. All right, so let's try and analyze, or let's see how this works. So strings, we can actually try and see how this is working because it looks like a standard executable, and we should be able to get some information regarding how it works. So we can see that there we are. So it uses a cat, it uses the cat utility to actually give us the message here. And the reason why it didn't work, let's actually take a look at our environment variables. If we take a look at our environment variables, we can see we have the shell is bash, user Kane, the Apache log, and the path is set to user local bin, and yeah, so I think what we can do is we can leverage the cat utility, or we can actually create our own, so sort of like our own, and set our path to our own user directory with our modified cat binary. And then that cat binary, well, we know that this file doesn't exist, firstly, because our path is currently set to the actual directory where the binaries are stored. Even though, you know, we always have access to the cat binary, we know that this message right over here that tells us that that file is, we can't access that file. Let me see if I can find that here. There we are. So no such file or directory exists. We know that this file doesn't exist because it would have displayed it. So we can leverage this here, or the cat binary here. We can replace it with our own. And the way to do that is to actually change our path, right? So we can change our path to something like to our home directory, and we can then create our cat binary, our own, that is going to be malicious. So we can say, you know, echo, we can just say we want a reverse shell. Well, not a reverse shell, but we want a shell. So bin, we can get a standard shell session here, and we can then output that to cat, right? So we have the cat binary there that we just created. We now need to change our path environment variable. So export path to, and then we say home and Kane. We're currently logged in as the user Kane, right? We hit enter, and now if we run message Mike, we can see that permission is denied, chmod +x, and cat, well, we don't have access to that, so chmod is not allowed, permission denied. Could we copy this to the temp directory? So we can copy cat to the temp directory. So tmp, we don't have the copy command. That's weird. For some reason this seems to have ruined my shell. I actually know why that's the case. That's because we actually changed our environment variable, or the path variable. So I'll just export. Well, I don't think we'll be able to do that right now, but what we can do is we can just say, you know, we can just exit from this and go back to the user Kent, right? And we can just try and log in again to Kane. I think that should work, although I'm not entirely sure. I should have actually changed the permissions earlier. Sudo Kane, there we are, and paste in the password for Kane. Cannot open. We know the commands are working now, so we can say chmod +x to give it executable permissions, and we say chmod +x cat, and we just check out the environment variables again. We need to change them one more time, so export path to home Kane, right? And now we should be able to run this, hopefully, and message Mike. Hit enter, and we type in ID. Well, that doesn't work. It simply gives us a it doesn't look like that works here, so we might have an issue. Let's try and explore this a little bit more. Those commands aren't working, so we're currently in the user Kane. All right, so we're currently in the user Kane. Let's try and spawn a bash shell here. So again, Python C import, and we're importing a pty, so pty.spawn, and we'll just spawn a simple bin bash. Sorry about that, and we hit enter. Well, we made a mistake there. Just terminate that, and let's get our listen again. We have to do that all over again, which I think should be fairly simple. We just need to set the line flag. So let me just repeat that one more time, and I'll get back to you. All right, so I'll just check the path again. Once again, of course, we need to do that again. So export path, and we'll just say home Kane, right? And that should be good now. And then we say message Mike. That should give us our shell session here. And again, we can just, I'll just spawn a reverse shell. Sorry, that is the password there. Let me just copy this here. I don't want to type that out over and over again. Python not found, that doesn't look right. So let's go into the user home, because that doesn't seem to be working. What about the environment variables? Yeah, that doesn't seem to be working as well. Interesting. That yeah, we should have actually spawned a normal shell session, because the default shell is set to bash, right? So let me just repeat that process again. So I think I should be able to exit from here. So Kane, and we just say, you know, message Mike, and there we are. And then I'll just spawn a shell session if we can actually access that. But before I do that, let me just check the home directory. Home list, that doesn't look like it's working. Environment variables, nope, that doesn't work as well. Do we have access to the user Mike? That still doesn't work. Interesting. So let me just spawn a shell session. All right, so what I did is I actually discovered the issue. I was specifying, you know, a simple shell instead of a bash session. So I modified the cat binary that we created and essentially specified the executable, which is, you know, bash, and I've, you know, enabled the permissions, and we can now run message Mike. I've also set up the path correctly, message Mike, and it looks like we have access to the user Mike right now. So environment variables, we don't have access to that. So it looks like we still have the issue now for the user Mike, in the sense that we can't actually access any, we can't actually run any commands. If I try and run any other commands, it looks like the environment variables for the user Mike have also been changed for some reason, which is slightly weird. So let's take a look at this closer. All right, so again, to sort this, all you need to do is just export the path, you know, and set it to the standard path where you can get all the binaries that can allow us to navigate, right? So I'm just gonna navigate to my home, to my home directory for the user Mike. I should be able to do that. It looks like it's still set the path as well. So let me just list out the environment variables. Let's see. You can see the home is still set to home Kane, but I don't think we need to change that right now. We can access the actual account for Mike, and we have a new binary, which is message to root. All right, so let's try and execute this message to root and see what we get. So we need to enter a message for the root user, so we can hit test, and it simply echoes back what we actually, you know, put out. So this looks like a simple, we can actually just, analyze what's going on in the background. So message to root with strings, and let's see what's happening, you know, once we specify it. So we can see message for root, and then it echoes out whatever we printed, but we can actually, we provide the string here, and that is displayed under root messages, or that is actually echoed out to root messages.txt. And the actual, we can actually enter this as a second variable, if you wish to call it that, or the actual input variable. So the first input variable is taken up by echo, so we can echo and then specify another command. However, we can also use this to run another command. So for example, we can spawn a shell session. So I think we can actually test this out. So message to root, right? And then we just hit you know, the message itself. So we can hit test, and then I can say bin sh, hit enter, ID, and it looks like we have root access. There's only one way to check that out, and we have the flag, so flag.txt, and congratulations, we have successfully elevated our privileges. All right, so yeah, that's a fairly, I would say, a fairly decent challenge, especially dealing with binaries. But these were fairly simple binaries that didn't involve any reverse engineering of sorts. Simply understanding how some of these binaries were designed, and a quick way of actually analyzing that is to view the strings. It's a fairly simple way of seeing what's going on in the background, and getting essential commands that give you a hint as to what these scripts are, or what these binaries are doing. In our case, we have modified we have played around with the environment variables and various binaries. So the privilege escalation part might not be that realistic. But overall, the web exploitation phase was really the core aspect of this particular box. So that's pretty much going to be it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comment section, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.